Welcome back. I'm Michael Bull, and this is the Commercial Real Estate Show. Our topic today is the restaurant industry. Everyone's interested in the restaurant industry, right? Especially if you're in the commercial real estate business, because restaurants have become a big part of the retail real estate market. And please welcome my next guests, Eric Gagnon and Robin Gagnon. They are founders of We Sell Restaurants. They're the nation's largest restaurant brokerage firm. They also wrote the book, Appetite for Acquisition. Eric, Robin, thanks for joining us today.
We are so glad to be here. Thanks for having us,
Well, we
Michael.
appreciate it. And they also have a talk radio show on Talk 920 on noon on Saturdays and on Biz 1190 at 1 o'clock on Sundays in Atlanta about We Sell Restaurants. So you got to catch you guys on the radio too, right?
Absolutely. Love to have some more listeners.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thanks for joining us today. And, my first question is related to you guys are in the industry every day. You're buying and selling restaurants. You're helping these restaurant owners with their franchisees and franchisors and everything. So from your side of the environment, what are you seeing with the higher demand for space? We're having more demand, as we just heard, for key Class A great space. So how's that affecting the industry?
Well, last year there were 980,000 restaurants in America. This year there's projected to be 990,000. So that growth rate is creating demand for fewer numbers of spaces and more restaurants that want to launch. So we see, for example, one realm that's growing is restaurant resales. So a proposed tenant can't get into a space that he wants. He's going to buy out the guy that's already in there, because one of the most valuable things he has is access to a lease that may be transferable to him. So that's one way that we're seeing that demand affect us.
Yeah, we're seeing values of A+ space, because there's only A+ space, like the ocean. There's only one ocean. You can't produce that much more. The growth in the past would see people going out in the outskirts and things growing, like sprawling. But that has kind of stopped, and now everybody wants to be back where A+ space are. But there's only so many of them, so they become more valuable. Like Robin said, more expensive, and also more competitive. So we see people willing to buy out somebody that's not doing well in an A+ space just to get access to that lease.
The other factor is a lot more flexibility, Michael. There was a time, maybe 10 years ago, when we started in this business, that someone said, my box must be 4,000 square feet, must be an end cap, must have a patio. That's all it is. And today, everybody is exploring the multiple flexible type concepts. So they may have something that scales all the way down to 2,500 square feet, no patio, up to 6,000 square feet. So it's not a one-size-fits-all environment anymore, and that's partly because of the scarcity of space. The other thing is that we're seeing more stringent requirements, right, Eric?
Yeah, landlords are becoming more and more, choosy about who they're going to bring into space. So a lot of them don't want a new concept. And a lot of seasoned operators have this new concept, and you go to a landlord or a developer and say, we have this new concept. Well, we don't know about it. We really want something that has already got a proven track record, maybe other locations. So an operator has proven that multiple concepts in his portfolio are able to be successful. So we're seeing a lot of different criterias and personal guarantees and all the things that I'm sure you talk about with other guests on your shows that are becoming more and more prevalent. Liquidity, as we know, it's a big thing, but it's especially for restaurants, because the burn rate is a lot higher than a lot of other businesses. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing a lot more stringent requirements on these aspects.
And lastly, I would say this: every single person looking for space in today's environment, time is your enemy. And we tell them this over and over again, but you've got to have a go-to-market ready package strategy so that when that space presents itself, we are ready to jump in and be prepared, because what's on the table today is not going to be there tomorrow. So to be ready is key.
That's very good advice. And the benefit of having the flexibility and the size of your space has multiple benefits, right? And not only maybe you can fit in various and have more location decisions and opportunities, but you also can adjust the size for that market, right? So you might not need such a big space in some of the markets, especially some of the more urban markets right?
Absolutely. And you may also learn something about your business model, and that on a sales per square foot basis, you actually downsize something and find out that you're much more profitable because your cost per square foot goes down or your sales per square foot goes up dramatically. So we actually find operators that end up right-sizing themselves over time. And in a period where there were all kinds of choices and they could always be this luxurious 4,500 square feet, they may never have learned that about their business model.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So that demand you're seeing for those great spaces is helping existing restaurant owners be able to sell. I mean, that's great news. So they may even have a restaurant that's maybe not all that very profitable, but they've got a great lease, so they have something to sell, right?
Correct. We see that a lot right now.
Yeah.
There's some people that have maybe had a concept that has been, 15, 20 years and it's tired, and they decide, hey, I'm ready to retire. I do not want to refresh my concept. I'm just ready for, this place at the beach or in the mountains I've been dreaming all my life. And now they're ready for that. Like, hey, I don't have much to sell. It's like, no, not quite right. You have a very valuable lease, and if we can convince the landlord to keep these rates and going in places for the next 5-10 years, we may be able to get you, several hundreds of thousands of dollars just for that lease, that valuable lease.
Yeah, that reminds me, I was actually in the restaurant business when I was in high school. I was the night manager.
Little known fact, we're going to have to tweet about that.
That's right. I was a night manager of a steakhouse and actually did the NDC reports and hired and made sure the people were doing their jobs, and it was a great experience. It made me really appreciate commercial real estate later, though.
That's right. You probably enjoy the hours a lot better in the commercial real estate, right?
That's right. And you mentioned for restaurant operators as tenants to be ready, to be prepared when they're looking at space so they can jump on it. How should they be prepared? What do they really need to get those great spaces when they become available?
Everybody should get a pen, piece of paper right now and take some notes. Robin, you want to get us started?
I've got my paper.
All right.
I know you do.
Absolutely. Rule number one, when we have proposed tenants come to us and say, I want to put in a restaurant, and I say, what type, where's your menu? And they say, we're working on it. I say, go do that homework and come back, because the first thing that landlord wants to know is, what is this concept? How does it fit into my center currently? What are the surrounding demographics? Does it have a potential for success because of where it's coming in? So writing that business plan all the way down to who you are, what your experience is, who your customer will be, what your price points will be, what your menu service and selection will be is critical. So your business plan, your personal financial statement. You've got to have your personal business affairs in order. Pull your own credit check. Make sure there are no surprises up front. You don't want to wait till we've presented you to the landlord and go, oh, well, didn't know that bankruptcy 7 years ago would ever haunt me again in this scenario. So all those elements, everything you need to go to market so that we can turn on a dime and say to a landlord with lots of credibility and lots of assurances, this is a great candidate. He has a well thought out idea. He knows who his target audience is, and your center fits that model, because you're walking into a landlord saying, we want to be successful together. It's a partnership,
right.
And you got to sell yourself in this day and age.
That's a very good point. It is a partnership, and the landlords are concerned because if you don't make it, it's bad for their center. And not only you're not paying the rent possibly, but you're also not bringing in the traffic, right?
Correct.
Yeah, another good point is speaking of partnership, if you have a partnership, we see a lot more people getting together, pooling resources right now to go in because costs have gone higher and higher. Make sure that partnership agreement and you have is in place, already signed. Your attorneys have consumed everything that you need to be ratified, and also fund that partnership before, because when landlord says, they will verify your bank account nowadays, and you says, oh, well, we'll figure that out once we get the space. By the time you figure out your partnership agreement, more likely the space will have you to have other, letter of intent on, or somebody else will take that space.
Right, and it's, it's obvious if you're a big company, you've got good credit, but if you're a smaller operator, they want to know how much money you have and what your experience is and what your credit's like. It makes sense. Well, we're going to take a short break. We'll stay with us. We'll have more on the restaurant industry. I'm Michael Bull. This is the Commercial Real Estate Show. We'll be right back. The Commercial Real Estate Show is brought to you in part by your friends at Bull Realty. When your business requires proven performance, visit bullrealty.com or call 800-408-BULL. Welcome back to the Commercial Real Estate Show. I'm Michael Bull. Today we're talking about the restaurant industry. My guests are Eric Gagnon and Robin Gagnon. They wrote the book Appetite for Acquisition. They also have a company called We Sell Restaurants. And one of the big things that restaurant operators need to be concerned with, right, is their lease. I mean, that's a big portion of controlling their business for a long time, and it's one of the things that we see landlords and tenants sometimes take too lightly. What are some tips that you would provide for restaurant operators related to their lease?
Michael, I don't think we have enough time on the show to go through all of them.
We could do the whole show on that.
That's right. We could do a whole show on this, but we'll definitely give some. I think one of the first thing is, we believe get an expert. Restaurant leasing is a specialty on its own. So make sure you have an expert or a licensed professional with you to help you, negotiating and be also kind of a buffer, because it gets pretty emotional sometimes, as you know, negotiating terms like this. So have a professional to help you would be probably a good start. Somebody that's done restaurant leasing, can understand restaurant leasing and explain to the landlord. Because if you just go to landlord, like, I know Darren earlier in your show today said, occupancy costs 8% be nice, 10, 11 is what we're seeing. And you go to landlord, well, it's got to be 10% because that's what restaurants pay. That's not going to be a good explanation to make them understand why you should be at that and why you should, not go beyond that. So you got to be able to prove your business case. In order to do that, you need to be knowledgeable about more than just real estate. You got to know the operations part of it.
Well, let me ask you about that. So you mean maybe someone that's a consultant in the restaurant industry that understands the business like you guys? It also may mean a tenant rep, a broker who understands leases and the market and the local laws and customs for real estate. And you're also talking about a real estate lawyer, right? And maybe a lawyer that's really done a lot of restaurant work?
Correct. And again, bring it back to what Eric said, it's also infrastructure. I mean, a restaurant, for example, needs higher HVAC needs than traditional restaurant space. So someone who's just done retail space may not understand that. They may need increased electrical requirements. So we also need to consider that. And an attorney obviously needs to be a partner to that lease, but what we find is often attorneys look at this just through the lens of the law. What is the legal language saying? That restaurant broker or restaurant professional that knows the business is going to be looking at business terms like the number one thing, not only how do you get into this lease, what happens to you when it's time to get out? Yeah. And we always bring that to the table. That's an important consideration because you don't want to believe that any prospect could fail, but if it does, then what's your liability? What's your ongoing personal guarantee? What is the landlord's requirements to look at and do an assignment for someone new, and how long do they have to do that, and what are the credit requirements? Because you don't want to be stuck in this never land where you have a buyer ready to go into your space and you can't transfer a lease because of a business deal you signed 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And that lease can sometimes control the fate of that business for a very long time, right? So you've got those considerations that maybe the attorney hasn't seen the site and he's not aware of what's around it or what the parking situation is, or maybe what the competitive market's like. If this lease doesn't get done, where are they going to go, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's a simple matter. I don't know if Darren mentioned it, but I think net adjusted for inflation this year, we're talking about a 1% increase in sales. And most leases in the retail world are like 3% a year increase. Right. So I'm down 2% for my profit. If my profit's 10%, in 5 years, I am working for the landlord. I am not making a dime.
Yeah. Well, landlords like that. No.
Landlords do like that. They do, but that's the challenge you have. So how do we get with the landlord, have an open discussion, say, hey, we want to be here for a long time, but we got to make sure we also can make money to pay ourselves.
I mean, of course, we're kidding. Landlords want their tenants to be successful. That's obvious. They've got to be successful to pay the rent and stay, right?
Absolutely, they do. And the last thing I would say, and we all talked about this, but don't ever go out and negotiate on your own, because sometimes people have that mistaken impression that if they bring a broker on board that it costs them some sort of money. And we should just point out that most of the time commissions are handled by the landlord. So what you're getting is the valuable expertise and experience of someone who's going to save you money, who's on your side and advocating on your behalf. And I think that's a key piece.
I mean, that's a very good point. I mean, when we sell investment properties, we sell shopping centers, and when we're doing our underwriting for the long-term hold of that asset, we're building in leasing commissions. And in fact, some landlords really like it when there's a tenant rep, because then the tenant doesn't have unreasonable expectations as well, and it can help really a deal get done. And I think you're right. Some of the tenants think that they know their business so well, they're so successful, they don't need it, and they can make some big mistakes. And we've seen it in all industries.
That rent, occupancy, food, and labor, those are the three things that over the long term you must manage as a restaurateur. So if you get stuck into a long term fixed cost problem, because labor is variable, you can fix it up or down depending on how sales are going, as well as your food costs. They're going to go up or down, it's variable. But that fixed cost of the rent is the one that's going to be around your neck for a long time. You got to get it right.
Yeah, and it's key if you can get it, if you have the leverage as a tenant to get some flexibility too. Maybe you want to change and serve a different type of food or something if you have a problem. So a lot of tips professionals can help you with, and we'll have more on the restaurant industry. I'm Michael Bull. This is the Commercial Real Estate Show. We'll be right back.
The Commercial Real Estate Show is brought to you in part by Florida International University. With FIU's Fast Track system, you can earn your master's in real estate in just 10 months without interrupting your career. Visit FIUonline.com to learn more. That's FIUonline.com.
Welcome back to the Commercial Real Estate Show. I'm Michael Bull. Thanks for being with us. We're talking about the restaurant industry today. We have Eric Gagnon and Robin Gagnon with us. They wrote the book Appetite for Acquisition, and they have a radio show called We Sell Restaurants. And guys, there's a lot of changes in the demographics out there today. There's a lot of changes in the society. How's that impacting the restaurant industry? What changes are you seeing?
Well, we, as restaurant brokers, some of the societal changes that are impacting us dramatically is if you think back to, for example, franchises. Franchising really started in America in the 50s. So those original franchisors had bought these legacy brands because as the interstate highway system grew, then a franchise would locate there. And that's how America kind of learned to buy that same brand every time they were on vacation. So now we're looking at the third generation of that ownership. So we have had the original generation that purchased the business and started up. Then they transferred it, and they had a great, survived very well, did very well for their family, maybe bought 2 or 3 more units. It's time for them to turn the reins over to their grandchildren, who are millennials, who are saying, not so much, I'm not interested. So those changeovers of franchise resales are really driving a lot of growth in the industry. So you were seeing restaurants change hands at a faster rate than they would have even 10 years ago.
Yeah, and we're also seeing a lot of change in technology. But people think technology, they think cell phone, mobile apps, television, POS systems. But we also see a lot of new technology in the restaurant equipment. I mean, Robin and I are fortunate to go to a lot of the trade shows and stuff, things like that, and it's amazing the new technology, whether it's gas or electric or there's some ovens right now you can actually put a flash drive in and it will actually cook automatically your food that
I need that at home.
Yeah, I think we all do. I think you're so right about that. And so it's amazing the technology in the restaurant industry. I mean, we're talking kitchens. I know most large cities have large kitchen, unless you go to New York City and different places where they have a little smaller. But I mean, the kitchen of the future, it's probably looking a lot smaller than it is, which is good for occupancy costs, so we can reduce that. So technology is influencing all aspects from the consumer all the way to the back of the house.
And while you're talking about technology, there's a lot of talk about increasing the minimum wage, and in fact, in a big way. And is technology going to be more involved in the restaurant industry? Are we going to go to the fast food and not see a person anymore if they've got to double their pay? Are we going to be dealing with an app or something?
I think it's absolutely possible that more and more operators are going to turn to technology to solve problems that they're using people for today, particularly at the minimum wage level. And the pressure on minimum wage to raise is simply going to escalate that growth in technology, so that you walk up, now you scan your own groceries at the grocery store. Why couldn't you walk into a McDonald's and just key in your own order from that terminal yourself? Because people are so app friendly, they could do it on their phone before they got there and then just pick it up and prepay it with a credit card.
And that's interesting. You mentioned the millennials earlier, and if I'm with my son at the grocery store and we can check out ourselves or we can go to a person, he wants to go do it himself.
Right.
He says, "Look, Michael, Dad, this is faster. It's easier."
Exactly, and you're in control of the situation, and so people like that, particularly in fast food and quick serve segments of the industry, and those are the segments that are most heavily leveraged towards the most workers at that entry level price point of a minimum wage.
You mean my order won't get messed up anymore if
Well,
I'm doing it?
You only have one person to blame.
That's a theory.
That's right. Well, I was reading the LA Biz this morning. There was an article about two guys who started a company called Appetize, and it's really interesting. It's an app where if you're in a sporting event or a show, that you can order your drinks and concessions and pay for it right from your seat. So technology is really impacting this industry, isn't it?
It is. It's such a tremendous, impact on, especially on the consumer side, like you mentioned. Now you can go to a ball game. I mean, you actually have now restaurants that, if you allow them, will track your last order, your preferences. What table do you like? What did you order last time? If you like a Chateau Lafite 68, they will have that for you ready if you'd like. I mean, they will keep even the guests that you had with you, their company. They'll keep everything on record for you to your custom, needs, which is, and a little scary, because if you decide to have something else that day, and you may change your mind, but it is impacting the consumer. It is impacting the industry. It's also part of it. Labor pool has been very difficult to find quality people in the industry. It's been very hard because we know there's a good turnover that's a little greater and everything like that. And a lot of people believe technology will give you greater opportunity to upsell or to make proper recommendation, because if you think of a human being, sometimes they may forget to ask you for an additional thing, or give you some information based on what you just ordered or what you're asking, make the proper recommendation. And they believe that automation and technology may be able to overcome that on a more consistent basis.
Yeah, I mean, the computer's going to do it. It's not going to say no or forget, right?
Well, and how much more do you order just when the basic menu is beautiful and full of photographs? So then imagine that next menu presented to you is in the form of an iPad, and so everything you look at and touch comes up with a mouth-watering picture, and then a suggestion. Would you like this to accompany that meal? It's amazing.
Yeah, I like it. I've been to restaurants that have the iPad, and it really makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. Think about it. We talk a lot about farm to table and technology. If you think about this, think about having an iPad while your meal is being cooked, and talk to the farmer, have a video of the farmer telling you about where your food came from and everything.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You talk about technology to know what I ordered last time. I went to a restaurant the other day. When I walked in, they said, "Oh, hello, Michael Bull. Welcome back to the restaurant." Now, how do they know my name?
You're famous.
From your show.
No. Then they looked down and said, "You've got your name tag on from your morning meeting." Oh, okay. All right, well.
That's so funny.
So that was kind of old school right there. There was no technology used there, right? No, they didn't recognize me. I get more recognized from my voice. I'll be at an event and people will hear my voice and they'll know me. They can look right at my face and not know who I am. So I'm just a voice out there. Well, thanks for joining us, and we're going to have more for you in just a moment on the restaurant industry. I'm Michael Bull. This is the Commercial Real Estate Show, your voice in commercial real estate. We'll be right back.
The Commercial Real Estate Show is brought to you in part by RealNex, providing a comprehensive suite of powerful commercial real estate tools at an incredibly low cost. Visit realnex.com. That's REALNEX.
Welcome back. I'm Michael Bull, and this is the Commercial Real Estate Show. Today we're talking about the restaurant industry. We have Eric and Robin Gagnon with us in the studio, in Studio One here in Atlanta. And I'd like to ask you guys about location analysis. I mean, it's important to a restaurant that they have the right location. It's important as well, as we talked about earlier, because the landlord is important to the landlord because they're a partner. This tenant really has to make it. What are some tips for restaurants for site location?
I think one of the key things is, you got to look, scarcity is happening right now. There's a lot of, we talked about A-plus location earlier. So we have to have, everybody wants an A-plus location, but not everybody can get it. So patience is going to be one of the things that people should have. Also look at more than one facet, like we talk about different size box, non-traditional box, maybe can fit for your location. And, a lot of tenant reps look at new development, maybe some releasing of closed restaurant space. But if you looked at restaurant brokers like We Sell Restaurants, for instance, restaurant for sale. Maybe you can buy a restaurant. So that broker may not have access to that. So it may be good to have another broker to look at that is more focused in that area.
Point.
So you give you more option to look at that. And again, if you see something, Robin said it earlier, be ready, be prepared, because you're not going to have a lot of selection. We have a lot of people calling our offices. I say, I've been working at a broker for 6 months and he's only got me 2 spaces. And I'm like, well, that's actually pretty good, depending on the markets you're in.
Right.
And I think also that if you are really serious about finding the best location, we need to understand exactly what it is that defines that best location. So you said it. There are metrics out there. What do the demographics need to look like? What is the traffic count? What is your preferred set of standards? And then sort of let's back up from that then and see what might work. Do you have to go a little bit farther outside of your original footprint? And should you throw a few scenarios out there and test them depending on how big a brand that you are? So be clear about what it is that you want, and also a time frame for making that happen, because it won't be realistic in this marketplace, but have somebody advocating for you and looking for you on a consistent and concerned basis based on what you have in mind. Because if you go to everyone in town and just kind of take a shotgun approach and throw it out there and says, oh, this is what I'm looking for, you kind of won't be important to anyone. You need to build that relationship as well with the broker, whoever your tenant representative is going to be, and make sure you're dealing with someone that has some connections, deep connections within the industry.
Good point.
Because those folks, I'm sure that folks come to you, Michael, and say, listen, I'm not ready to turn this space over yet, but I've got XYZ tenant. I know they're going to roll out of there in the next 60 to 90 days. So you're kind of taking advantage of your relationships as well and being able to put things in front of clients.
That's good advice. And before the show ends, I want to ask you guys about competition when it comes to site location. What are some comments you could share with our listeners and viewers about, do they want to be near other restaurants, say in a shopping center? Who do they want to be away from or near?
Okay, so that is a two-sided question, because some people will say, there's too much competition there, I don't want to go there. And then other people will say, oh no, I want to be there because that means if somebody is super busy at this restaurant, they can't go there. But the number one thing people have said to us for the last 5 years is, wherever Chipotle is, we want to be there.
Well, that's interesting.
And Robin said it, pretty well, but I believe competition is good, and it's actually not competition, it's option, because not everybody eats at Chipotle every single meal.
Right.
So maybe I know where Chipotle is, but then I can also go to a hamburger shop or to a sandwich shop or to a steakhouse or something different. So if everything's a destination, then I think that's the best way to go.
Yeah, I like that. Sometimes I'll head out to go to a restaurant, and I'll head to an area where I know there's about 12 restaurants to pick from. And sometimes I'm driving, and my wife or children say, where are we going? Well, I don't know, but I'll figure it out. Well, guys, I really appreciate you joining us today. Thanks for being on the show.
Happy to
Our
be here.
pleasure.
Thank you.
If you'd like more information from them, visit their website, WeSellRestaurants.com, right? All right, well, excellent. Well, be sure and join us next week. We'll have a show on appraisals and assessments. I'm Michael Bull. Thanks for joining us this week. Until next week, be sure that you always lead, learn, and laugh, and join us for the Commercial Real Estate Show.
The Commercial Real Estate Show is brought to you by Bull Realty Commercial Brokerage, a great place to do business. Visit bullrealty.com. RealNex, a comprehensive suite of powerful commercial real estate tools at an incredibly low price. Visit realnex.com. That's RealNex. Sozo Web Hosting and Cloud Solutions. Secure, reliable, and worry-free. Visit sozo.com. That's SOZO.com. FIU, Florida International University. Earn your master's in real estate online in as little as 10 months. Visit FIUonline.com. And by France Media, providing exposure to the world of commercial real estate. Visit francemediainc.com. For more information on these great companies or for additional podcasts, videos, or blogs, visit creshow.com.